Hi, it's Susan Short with FBTV, and we have an exceptionally interesting episode for you today. We are at the studio with Norton Wisdom, surrounded by his incredible art. What a story. It has to be told. So amazing, so interesting. So get ready for a deep dive into the art of Norton Wisdom. And remember this, California Locos. So let's take a look. So tell us more about the bases, the trapezoidal bases.
So the basis, right, I'm thinking, well, this is interesting, right, that one thing about human beings is we need heroes, we need to elevate somebody, right, because of our own petty little lives and our problems and our our opinions of us failing at so much, what we want to be and what we are, there's so much disparity between those two those 2 points of the spectrum.
Yes.
Is they keep the basis anytime, like when Stalin or Saddam or Lenin, anytime there's a change in
regime, they get rid of the bronze statue, but they always have the base, right?
They just pull them down and quickly put up the next epic is immediately. So they generally keep the basis to elevate their next person that they're going to give power to. So anyway, so I think, well, that's interesting. The bases, I'll just focus on bases, right? Because it's kind of a human thing of whoever's next, we've got a place to put them in. So anyway, I was doing all these bases out of metal and stuff. And one day I was drawing a base. I was doing a projection of it to do a bronze sculpture of it, of one of these truncated pyramids. I was looking at it from the top, and all of a sudden, you could see like here, this is like if you're looking at a drawing from the top,
right.
All of a sudden it went into empty space, and then at the same time it popped out as volume. So it kept going in and out. And like in physics, like in quantum physics, it did it without time. In other words, if I was recessive, if my spirit of the day was recessive, the thing would go in, the image that I'd be drawing would go in, and then if I was overtly sort of aggressive, the image would pop out. So it followed me through the day as my comport changed. The drawing or the painting, right, would follow my persona, and they kind of lived and breathed with who I was, and I think that when people perceive my works, I think that's why people, when they have them, they have them, they can live with them. They're not a question of fashion. They bought them and then, oh God, I got that Norton in there. We're putting
because as you change in life, it changes with you.
It follows you without cluttering it with objects.
Right.
In other words, the problem with filling a work of art with objects is like everything in life. You get a new car. Oh wow, I love my new car, right? And then somebody scratches it, and then the windshield wiper does it. So within 6 months, it's like, oh, that car.
Yeah.
Right? So the car, like one of these things, all of a sudden it pops out at you when it's fresh and exciting, but then it slowly fades in. So if you have a painting that's based on images, right? Those images might be exciting when you first get the painting, but pretty soon they become invisible.
Right.
So I just don't have that narrative story in my work.
Yeah.
I've just gotten rid of all the stuff, and all I have is what Immanuel Kant calls the intuition of space, of empty space. It's all mind dependent. And then Immanuel Kant's another story of the Berkeley story, because at Berkeley everybody was into Ludwig Wittgenstein, who was a semanticist, and now he was the big cyclops at the end of the story, and everything was my little room going in and out, and throwing in to Immanuel Kant into the mix. All of a sudden, the back square becomes the end of our imagination, the end of the universe. The wall, as far as we can perceive the universe, it becomes a wall, right? In other words, but any tiny perception of a wall, of course, means that there's something behind it. So in other words, it becomes this sort of very strange, like involvement.
Portal? Yeah.
A portal.
It's a portal.
It's a perfect
Yeah.
word. It becomes a portal, you know what I mean, to the next universe.
Yeah.
So if you could imagine these issues, this one square here being the back wall of our imagination, of the universe, right? And that, anyway, that keeps this how I've squandered my life. It keeps it sort of driven.
Yeah,
by these,
because
by
the
these-
interpretations are endless.
it was therapy.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I started in the late '70s. Started showing in Munich, and I was in Munich in '81 having a show, and after the show, at that time, right at that time, Reagan was going to save Germany by neutron bombing it, because the Russians were threatening to overrun Europe with their tanks in '81, and Reagan stepped in and says, well, I'll just neutron bomb Germany, kill all the people and save the buildings. And somehow the Germans didn't think that was the best idea.
Not a good idea. No, terrible. I didn't
So there
even
was
know
a
that.
huge march, you know, while I was there in Munich, there was a huge march on Bonn, like one of the biggest political marches ever, 300,000 people, something. And so I was at the dinner party after the opening, my opening in Munich. I was having dinner with Werner Herzog and this
Wow.
amazing sculptor and myself. And we decided that we could no longer live in our ivory palaces. We had to get out and get involved with what was going on politically in Germany at the time. So we kind of decided that we were going to go to Berlin and
You and Werner Herzog?
and the sculptor.
Wow, who was the sculptor?
Nikolai Traeger, who was
Okay.
an amazing sculptor. He just passed away. And so we were going to go there, and Nicholas was going to do a bass carving on the Berlin Wall, and I was doing a painting, and Werner Herzog was going to auction it off. So we were getting, and this was kind of, you know,
Yeah,
our plan.
art plan, marketing, you know,
And then
guerrilla.
Werner and I got in this huge argument of this right, and it just went downhill over each other's clash of cultures. He thought I knew nothing about my American culture, and I definitely was pretty convinced that he wasn't really familiar with a lot of German culture. So anyway, so this turned into be a big mess, and it sort of dissolved, and I left that night for a big mural I was doing in a castle in Baden-Baden. And while I was in Baden-Baden, I took acid and I went for a big run in the forest there, which is very magical, full of toadstools and little gremlins and stuff like that. So on this run, I had this epiphany. I had this Gustav flash that Norton, do what you do best, but do it on the Sistine Chapel. And I go, ooh, what the fuck does that mean, right? So anyway, the run, went on for hour, 5 hours. And so when I finished
that long run.
So when I finished, I said, well, the Sistine Chapel. What's the Sistine Chapel? It was what Michelangelo painted.
Of course.
Which was the division between the pagan world, because there were pagan gods in the Last Judgment, and the Christian world, which had the Christian gods and Christ and everything. So you had these two sort of absolute forces that were completely separated, but Michelangelo brought them together. And it was also between the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. It was all the Sistine Chapel was all about these two sort of separate worlds being brought together by Michelangelo. And I said, well, what would that be in my life? Well, there's the Berlin Wall that separates good and evil, right? Reagan was calling it, the Empire of Evil. And I said, well, maybe that's still in the maybe I should still revise that, going to Berlin and doing something in the Berlin Wall. And what should I do? And I go, well, do what I do best, right? That was part of this epiphany. I go, well, I'm an abstract painter, so I won't go there and make a political statement. I'll just go there and paint abstract paintings on the Berlin Wall.
Okay.
That was just sort of the thing. I left that day for Berlin. I got there, and in '81, I was told you couldn't touch the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall was like the cash cow that the West was using it to show how Russia had the Soviet Union had imprisoned their entire population behind this wall, and this was the West was showing this wall was really the symbol of the
evil,
terror. Of the evil,
the terrorist regime, yeah.
So anyway, so I couldn't touch it. Every time I would say I'm going to paint here, I was chased away from the wall by the police eye. So finally, one of the police told me that there's a place in Vetting, which is the Turkish area, that nobody gives a fuck about, right? You can go there and nobody's going to bother you. So I went there to Vetting, which is a, you know...
What is it, Vetting?
Vetting. It's a little area in Berlin. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of the ghetto.
Gotcha.
And in there, there's the Berlin Wall, and then the Berlin Wall the old Berlin Wall that was before the Soviet Union put up the new Berlin Wall. There was a sort of a horseshoe of the old wall they had. So I jumped over the old wall into East. Now I'm into East Berlin.
You
right?
weren't worried about this or anything?
I'm a fucking surfer from California. I figured that I'd be
You didn't
chased.
think you're going to be in the gulag for like 10 years
I
after
figured there'd
this?
be a little bit of a chase, and I would throw my Walkman at them, and I'd say, in 10 years, I'll see you at Disneyland.
Okay,
It's all
okay.
gonna work out. This is up to you. Come on, what could happen to us?
Okay. Was it like dark and cold also, or was this day or night?
I didn't realize at that time they had
Guard dogs, machine guns, barbed
they
wire.
had shot 500 people that year, fucking with the East Germans trying to escape.
Yeah.
They had self-shoot machine guns.
Ooh.
The death strip is right. Well, you know, I'll show you some
But
pictures.
the police told you to go to this area.
The police-
You told
but
them
then-
what your
but then-
intentions were.
But then
and
when the guy wrote down, here, go to Vetting, he wrote down, then he panicked that they were going to find this piece of paper that he wrote. He tracked me down and grabbed the piece of paper from me saying, I don't want you to have any evidence that I told you what to do.
It's funny, not funny.
So when I jumped over the wall into East Germany, then the West Berlin police, the East Berlin couldn't see me because I was next to the wall, right? So I was in the shadow of their machine gun towers. And the West Berlin police couldn't get to me because I was in East Berlin.
Right.
So I had to stay there for 3 days. And
What do you mean you stayed there for 3? You
I couldn't
camped
leave.
out? Oh, so the East Berlin police got
camping out
you.
is not quite the word I would.
What did they do? They took you to their headquarters or what?
No, I wasn't captured.
You weren't
until
captured.
I left, until I went back into West Berlin, and I was arrested by the West Berlin police. The East Berlin police, the Polizei in East Germany never saw me because I was hugged next to the wall. I stayed
see.
there for 3 days and I basically survived off Russian vodka and the paint was mixed with American urine. So that's how this
That's
thing manifested.
crazy.
So after 3 days, I finished this mural that was 150 meters long. I jumped back into
West Berlin.
West Berlin and was arrested. And then I was flown out of that, you know, political expedient. Musicians my studio was down on West Adams, which was the hood here in LA. But musicians would hang out and would play while I would paint, right? So there was kind of a hangout in my studio for, you know, musicians when they weren't on tour. And when I got back, I said, you know, I just cannot see art being all about painting in a studio and taking it to a gallery. You know what I mean? We got to get involved with, you know, the world.
Right.
So the drummer from Iron Butterfly, the last drummer from Iron Butterfly, and this insane trumpet player, horn player, Snakepit, and I put together this punk band called Panic. And we went out in the early 80s and played all the punk clubs.
Wow.
And some of the craziest stuff I've ever done. I've done some interesting things.
Great day, great afternoon. Thank you so much, Norton. Thank you. Fantastic. Susan Short, FBTV. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We're here from LA. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
I love it.